Welcome back, csc103 class, to part 3 of our exercise 7 HTML CSS. We just have a little bit of CSS to finish up on, and we're just going to throw an image in here. I didn't mean for this to be 3 parts, but I guess for people who are doing this for the first time, wouldn't be bad to have the extra detail and the extra description as we go along. So I'm going to finish this up now, and just a couple things I'm going to throw in here. I'm going to go in my CSS to the body tags, and I'm going to just put one more declaration in my body declaration block, and I'm going to put in one just for padding. And for padding, I'm just going to put in, I'll put in like 12 pixels, and it just puts padding around kind of the inside of body. It just puts a little padding in there, just gives a little more margin around. So we'll just do that first. And then also another thing I want to do, this is again just a little tweaking kind of thing, but for our div break, you can see how it puts a big space in between because there's actually a non-breaking space, and it has kind of a default space above, space below kind of thing. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a margin bottom on here, margin bottom property, and I can actually put a negative value and try to almost take away some space. So I'm going to put margin bottom, and I'll put like negative, I'll try 16 pixels first because that's kind of a default size of our font. Maybe it's even a little bit bigger, and see what that does. And I'll click, and it's not doing anything, and I'll look over here, see if I have any mistakes, and I do. I spelled margin wrong, so put my R in there, and now you can see it pulls it up a little bit. And that's only a little bit. I want to pull it up a little bit more, so maybe I'll take it to like 24 and see how that looks. That looks pretty good. Maybe even to 30. And that looks good. So that's just a margin bottom negative 30 pixels, which kind of pulls it up a little bit. So it kind of takes away from the bottom margin of that div break that I have. So it looks a little more natural right now. I could do the same thing with the H1 because there's some extra space in there, but there's other ways to deal with that. But just for now, just to even it up a little bit. Also, another thing that I wanted to point out here that we can do with the CSS, just to show that we can do this, because remember when we did our HTML, we gave our P's IDs. Remember we had first and second. I think another time we called them left and right, but I called them first and second. So if I go into my CSS and I target that specific paragraph, I can actually, I'll put it right after the other paragraph so they're kind of together, and I'll put P, and then I'll put # first. That means it's the first paragraph, and I'll put a space, and then I'll put my curly brackets. And what I'll do here for the first paragraph is actually just give it just so you can see the difference, I'm just going to put color, and I'll give it a different text color. I'll give it maybe a blue, maybe a RGB blue, and I'll just use hex, and I'll just use 0000FF because that would be just our solid blue, and you can see how it turns kind of electric blue there, or RGB blue. And I'll try something just to show you something else too. We can put a background color, so I'll just type background dash color, and I don't want a capital B here. That might not help it. So I'm going to put I'll put something like DDDDFF. And now you can see what it does. It puts kind of a background blue color, and it's right up around it. And I could put a padding on there if I want, and I just have to be careful with this. I'll put a padding around that little block. This is the paragraph block, and the padding would go on the inside. Margin goes outside of that. Padding goes on the inside, and when you just do padding, I don't do right or left or anything. That means it'll go around all sides. So I'm going to do a padding of like 12 pixels and see what happens. Sometimes when we have this float, it might break it if I go too big. Like if I did it like 16, it might break it because it actually makes the page, it makes it too wide. I'd have to make our percentages of our width of our P's a little bit less because it doesn't give it enough space to fit in there. So I'll just make it 12 for now. And you can see as I'd move over, same thing would happen with the padding. It would get a little much. So I'll just put in a little bit just because it looks good in that box. Now again, I'm not saying that this page looks the way we'd want it. We're just doing some of these things just to see what we can do with CSS, that we could put a background color on a paragraph, we could put a color of the text, and we could target 2 different paragraphs by giving them ID names. So that's what we did there. And again, it does use a #. It uses the element right up against the ID name using the # to identify it. So you use quotes in HTML to first kind of give it a name, but then when you call it, you use the # and then the ID name. And you could do the same thing for a second paragraph if you wanted to do something else there, which we don't have to do right now. Okay, so One other thing we want to do here is we want to add a picture in here. We're going to add a picture from one of the shows. Maybe I'll take the guy from Fortitude, the sheriff. He's kind of a neat looking guy, and we'll put him over here. Now what I'm going to do is put it in front of the ordered list. So I'm going to have to go to my HTML. So I'm going to go to my HTML, and there's my break. I'm going to put it after my break. I'm going to put an image here, and the way we put in an image, we do an image tag, img src, and source is the attribute. So just like we use target and just like we use aref, image puts in an image, source is kind of where is it coming from. So I'm going to put equals and double quotes, and then I'm going to close it up. And this one does not have a closing tag. It just uses a single tag, and I'm going to find an image source. Now because we're working in CodePen, I can't upload anything from my computer or anything like that, or I can't even drag anything in. What I'm going to do is just go find something. So I'll go to here to my color codes, and I'll just look up Fortitude Sheriff. I'll put in the sheriff because this picture should come up right away, and I'll look under images, and here's a bunch of pictures of them. And I want to look at one that's not real big, maybe more of a close-up. Here's one that's 620 by 374. That's a decent size. I'll probably have to go a little smaller than that, but I'm going to select that. And since I'm taking it off the web, I'm going to right-click and do not save image as, because I'm not downloading it. I want to choose copy image address, just like we did with Pixlr to kind of open images on the web in Pixlr. So I'm going to copy image address. And I'm going to go back here, and I'm just going to paste that address into that image source, that area, just like a ref. I'm going to paste it in there, and it should put it on the page. And there it is. It's underneath the paragraph, so it's right on the page right now. I'll spread this out a little bit, and what I want to do is I want to actually make it smaller and put it to the right of my list. Now I can put an HTML attribute in here with width, or I can also do it in CSS. So I think I'll do it in CSS. Because we're gonna do something else with CSS too. We're gonna float it. So I'm gonna do this at the end of all my CSS. I could even do it right here because this is kind of where it's going. You know, if you look in the, as we move down the page, this is actually where the image is. So I'm just going to target the image, img, and that's targeting the image element. I don't need source because that's the attribute. And I'm going to target that image element. And what I'm going to tell it to do is I'm going to put in a width, and it was like 620. I'm going to put it maybe half the size, maybe like 300 pixels, and see how that looks. And there it is. Now it's still not going to the right of that yet because we didn't float it to the right. Because when you float an element, it goes to the left or right of whatever follows it, and the OL follows it. So if we put a float in there, it should go over here. So let's just see if that works. We're going to float right, and it's not a block element, so it should go over there. It shouldn't take up the whole space like paragraphs do. So and we already have a width of 330, so we already give it a width. So that's all we really need there. So that's pretty much what we want. I don't know if there was anything else we had to do with this. If we wanted to do something, throw a border on it, for example. You could throw a border on it. Borders require 3 values that have to go in there. You have to put what type. You could put like solid or most of the time you're using solid, so I'll just say solid. Solid. You could put the color. I'll just put black. And you can type black. You don't have to. You could put in the hex 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You could do that, and then you can put a pixel amount like 1 pixel. And it's a real thin border, but that's okay. So we have a real thin border around there right now. So that's what we have. We have our padding for our body. So we're just going to check everything a little bit. There's our padding. So I'm going to save what I have right now. And I think that's all we really have to do. You just want to check these, make sure they work, but I think we did that before. I think we made sure all these things work. And you can, if you wanted to, you could even link this thing. You could even hyperlink this by wrapping an A tag around the image source. Around the image tag, you could wrap that around if you want to have that be clickable or linkable as well. But we don't have to do that right now. So I think we covered everything we need to with our CSS as far as what we have so far. So I'm going to stop here, and you could stop here with all this extra stuff we did in here. So we got a nice little intro of HTML and CSS and doing some layout here. And I'm going to just save this one more time, and then if you want to send it to me, remember you just have to right click on it and copy link address, and that address, you could paste that in a new browser just to try it out, see if it works, or just send that to me. It'll be a URL once you paste it. So if you just go into another, if I went to another browser window and I clicked and I pasted, you could see that should put that file there so I could see it when you send it to me. I don't have to get into your, I don't have to log into your account or anything, but I'll just see your your HTML and CSS there. So that's all you have to do right now. If you just send that to me, that's good for exercise 7, and that's the end of part 3, and we'll work on some more CSS and JavaScript.